Today, I want to share something with you that I've come to understand after decades of research, something that might sound impossible, but that I have seen manifest time and time again in my laboratories, in my studies with shamans, and in the depths of my own consciousness. There is a truth about the nature of reality that has been veiled, not by conspiracy, but by the limitation of our own understanding. A truth that shows us that all of us, possess the capacity to alter reality in ways that challenge everything we thought we knew about the world. My name is Jacobo Grinberg, and for years I dedicated myself to studying the mysteries of the human mind, from the most advanced laboratories to the most ancient ceremonies. What I discovered changed me forever. Reality, that solid and tangible thing we think we know, is actually much more malleable than we ever imagined. And the key to modifying it is not in any external technology, but in the unexplored power of our own consciousness. When I was young, like many of you perhaps, I believed that reality was something fixed, unchangeable, something that simply had to be accepted. But my investigations led me down paths that traditional science rarely dares to explore. I worked with electroencephalographs, measuring the brain waves of shamans in a deep trance. I documented phenomena that conventional physics could not explain, and I developed what I called the Synergistic Theory, a revolutionary understanding of how human consciousness interacts with the very fabric of reality. The word synergistic comes from the Greek, meaning joint work, and that is exactly what our consciousness constantly does. It works in conjunction with the universal quantum field to create the experience we call reality. We are not passive observers of a pre-existing world. We are active co-creators of every moment, of every experience, of every possibility that manifests before us. I invite you, as we listen to this conversation together, to subscribe and share in the comments what you are feeling right now, because that sensation you are experiencing at this moment is already an alteration of your present reality. Give it a like if you feel that something inside you is awakening. Let me tell you something I experienced years ago when I was working with Pachita, an extraordinary healer who possessed abilities that defied all scientific logic. I saw her literally materialize objects out of thin air, heal diseases considered incurable, and transform physical reality before my very eyes. At first, my rational mind sought conventional explanations. It had to be an illusion. There had to be a trick, some explanation that my academic training could process. But the more time I spent studying these phenomena, the more I realized that I was witnessing something much more profound than any magic trick. I was seeing the direct demonstration of a fundamental human capacity that we have forgotten, the ability to access what I call the neuronal space, that dimension where individual consciousness connects with the universal matrix of information and possibility. The reality we perceive is like a holographic projection. Each fragment contains the information of the whole, and when we learn to access that information, we can modify the entire pattern. This is not abstract philosophy. It is something that can be measured, documented, and more importantly, experienced directly. In my research with the Synergistic Theory, I discovered that the human brain is not simply a processor of information, but a quantum transceiver capable of accessing fields of information that transcend the limitations of space and time. When we manage to synchronize our brain waves with these more subtle frequencies, we begin to operate from a level of reality where the conventional rules no longer apply. I have seen people who, after years of meditative practice and development of consciousness, are able to directly influence physical events. I have documented cases where conscious intention, focused with precision and emanating from a state of deep coherence, manages to manifest tangible changes in the material world. This is not blind belief or self-deception. It is the natural result of understanding and applying the true laws that govern the intersection between consciousness and matter. The key is to understand that consciousness is not a product of the brain, but that the brain is an instrument of consciousness. It is like a radio that can tune into different frequencies. Most people live tuned only to the densest frequencies, those that correspond to ordinary material reality. But there are countless other stations, other levels of reality waiting to be explored. When I began to work with altered states of consciousness, whether through deep meditation, work with sacred plants, or specific techniques for altering brain waves, I realized that each state of consciousness corresponds to a different reality. It is not that some are more real than others. They are all equally valid, but they operate under different sets of rules and possibilities. In the ordinary state of wakefulness, we live in a world where objects seem solid, where time flows linearly, where cause and effect operate in a predictable manner. But in expanded states of consciousness, we access realities where matter is revealed as condensed energy, where time becomes fluid, where intention can precipitate events in ways that defy linear causality. The forbidden truth is that these states are not anomalies or fantasies. They are legitimate aspects of our human nature that have been systematically ignored or discredited by a worldview that privileges only what is measurable and repeatable according to the most limited parameters of materialistic science. But let me be clear, I am not against science. On the contrary, I believe that true science must expand to include these phenomena. The Synergistic Theory is my attempt to build a bridge between scientific rigor and the reality of conscious experience at all its levels. One of the most revealing experiments I conducted was the study of brain synchronization between individuals. I discovered that when two people manage to synchronize their brain waves, especially in the and-delta frequencies, they begin to share not only emotional states, but direct information. It is as if their consciousnesses temporarily merge into a unified field of experience. This led me to understand something revolutionary. Individuality, as we conceive it, is largely an illusion. We are nodes of consciousness in an infinitely interconnected network. When we learn to operate from this understanding, when we stop identifying exclusively with the separate ego and begin to experience ourselves as expressions of a universal consciousness, our power to influence reality multiplies exponentially. I have worked with advanced meditators who can alter their brain activity at will, accessing states where they literally see the energetic matrix that underlies physical reality. They describe seeing patterns of light, sacred geometries, fields of information that extend infinitely in all directions. And the most extraordinary thing is that from these states, they can introduce changes in these patterns, which then manifest as alterations in the physical world. I particularly remember a case that I studied for months, a man who had developed the ability to influence electronic systems through mental concentration. He could turn devices on and off, alter radio frequencies, even affect the functioning of my own brain measurement equipment. At first, I thought there was some kind of electromagnetic interference, but the measurements showed that the changes originated in specific modifications of his neuronal activity, particularly in regions associated with concentration and directed intention. The truth is that we all possess these latent capacities. The difference lies in the degree of development and training. It is like the difference between someone who has never touched a piano and a virtuoso. The potential is there, but it requires practice, dedication, and above all, a fundamental change in our understanding of who we are and what is possible. The key to altering reality is not in forcing or manipulating, but in aligning with the deepest currents of existence. It is about learning to flow with the universal forces instead of opposing them. When we achieve this alignment, we become conscious channels through which transformation can manifest naturally. In my years of research, I have identified several fundamental principles that seem to govern the ability to alter reality. First, internal coherence. Consciousness must be unified, without internal conflicts that disperse energy. This requires deep work of self-knowledge and healing of the psychological fragmentations that we all carry. Second, synchronization with natural rhythms. There are specific moments and conditions where the malleability of reality increases. Learning to recognize and take advantage of these moments is essential. Third, purity of intention. The most profound and lasting alterations occur when the intention arises from genuine love and service, not from the personal ego seeking power or control. Fourth, receptivity. Paradoxically, the power to change reality increases when we stop clinging to specific outcomes and open ourselves to what is best for the greater good to manifest. Fifth, constant practice. Like any skill, the ability to consciously influence reality develops gradually through systematic training and accumulated experience. During my studies in indigenous communities, I learned that for them, altering reality was nothing extraordinary. It was an integral part of their worldview. The shamans I worked with explained to me that the physical world we perceive is just one of the multiple layers of reality. Learning to navigate between these layers, to influence one to create changes in another, was considered a natural ability that anyone could develop with the proper training. What struck me most was realizing that our modern civilization, by exclusively privileging material reality, has disconnected us from capacities that are part of our evolutionary heritage as a species. We have traded power for comfort, magic for technology, ancestral wisdom for superficial information, but this can be reversed in each of us. The potential to reconnect with these capacities has been dormant. The question is not whether it is possible to alter reality, but whether we are willing to do the necessary internal work to remember how to do it. I have spent years developing specific techniques based on my findings from the Synergistic Theory. Methods to synchronize brain activity, to access states of consciousness where direct influence over reality becomes possible, to develop the necessary sensitivity to perceive the subtle currents that constantly shape our experience. But before you think this is about obtaining special powers or personal advantages, let me be very clear. The true purpose of developing the ability to alter reality is to serve the evolution of human consciousness, to contribute to the collective awakening that our species needs to survive and thrive in the universe. Every time a person remembers their true nature as a conscious being with the capacity to influence reality, the entire human network benefits. It is like turning on a light in a dark room. It not only illuminates the local space, but it contributes to the total illumination. The times we are living in require a radical transformation in our understanding of reality and our role in it. The problems we face as a species cannot be solved from the same level of consciousness that created them. We need to access deeper capacities, higher forms of perception and action. The forbidden truth is that these capacities have always been available. What has been forbidden is not the knowledge itself, but our belief and our own limitation. We have been conditioned to believe that we are small and insignificant beings in a vast and indifferent universe. But the reality is exactly the opposite. We are local expressions of an infinitely creative universal consciousness. And when we remember this, our power becomes limitless. In my last years of research, before my physical disappearance, I was working on what I considered my most important contribution, a synthesis between Western science and ancestral wisdom that could serve as a map for the evolution of humanity towards a new stage of conscious development. I had managed to document that human consciousness is experiencing an accelerated evolutionary transformation. The capacities that were once exclusive to exceptional individuals are becoming accessible to an ever-increasing portion of the population. It is as if our species were awakening from a millennial dream, gradually remembering who we really are. This awakening is not only individual, but collective. We are witnessing the emergence of a planetary consciousness, a global network of awakened individuals who are learning to operate from deeper levels of reality. Each person who develops the capacity to consciously alter reality becomes an active node in this emerging network. The transformation that this implies is so profound that we can barely begin to glimpse its implications. We are talking about a humanity that no longer sees itself as a victim of circumstances, but as a conscious co-creator of reality. A humanity that understands that separation is illusory, that we are all interconnected in an invisible web of consciousness and energy. But for this transformation to be complete, each of us must take responsibility for our own awakening. We cannot wait for others to do the work for us. Every moment of expanded consciousness, every practice of inner development, every act of genuine love contributes to the collective awakening. The ability to alter reality is not a game or a hobby. It is a sacred responsibility. When we develop these powers, we become conscious custodians of planetary evolution. Every use of these capacities must be guided by wisdom, compassion, and a commitment to the greater good. I have seen what happens when these abilities are developed without the corresponding ethical and spiritual evolution. The result can be destructive for both the individual and their environment. That is why I insist that the development of the ability to alter reality must go hand in hand with the development of love, humility, and wisdom. The truth is that altering reality is something we all do constantly, only unconsciously. Our thoughts, emotions, beliefs, and actions are continuously influencing the quantum field that surrounds us, creating the experience we call our life. The difference lies in doing it consciously, with directed intention and a clear understanding of the principles that govern this interaction. When we finally understand that we are co-creators of our reality, everything changes. We are no longer victims of circumstances, but conscious architects of the experience. We no longer wait for the world to change to be happy, but we recognize our power to create the conditions for our own happiness and contribute to the happiness of others. This understanding brings with it an extraordinary freedom, but also an immense responsibility. When you know that you can influence reality, every thought, every emotion, every action acquires an importance that it did not have before. You realize that you are an active participant in the continuous creation of the universe. The invitation I extend to you is to explore these possibilities for yourself. Do not simply believe me because I say so. The truth of what I share can only be validated through direct experience. Start with simple practices of meditation and conscious attention. Observe how your internal state affects the events that manifest in your life. Experiment with directed intention and notice the synchronicities that begin to appear, but do it with patience and humility. These capacities develop gradually. Like any complex skill, do not expect immediate or spectacular results. The path of conscious development is gradual and requires constant dedication. I also recommend that you seek the guidance of authentic teachers, people who have walked this path before you and can guide you to avoid the obstacles and detours that are common in this type of exploration. The development of extraordinary capacities without proper guidance can be dangerous for both you and others. Remember always that the ultimate goal is not to obtain personal powers, but to contribute to the collective awakening of humanity. When we maintain this broader perspective, individual development becomes an act of planetary service. The forbidden truth that I have shared with you today is not really forbidden by anyone external. It has been forbidden only by our own mental limitations, by our beliefs about what is possible and what is not. But those limitations can be transcended, those beliefs can be transformed, and when that happens, a universe of infinite possibilities opens up before us. The present moment is extraordinarily conducive to this exploration. Humanity is experiencing an unprecedented evolutionary acceleration. The conditions are maturing for a massive awakening of capacities that have remained dormant for millennia. You are part of this historical transformation, and your individual awakening contributes to the collective awakening. The question that remains is, are you willing to take responsibility for your own awakening? Are you prepared to discover the true scope of your capacities as a conscious being? Do you have the courage to explore realities that challenge everything you thought you knew about yourself and about the world? If your answer is yes, then the most extraordinary journey of your life is about to begin. A journey towards the rediscovery of who you really are, and towards the practical realization of your innate power to participate consciously in the creation of reality. The truth is no longer forbidden. It is available to all who have eyes to see and ears to hear. The only question that remains is, what are you going to do with this information? The universe is waiting for your answer.